EC3 and Moose. What is going on with EC3 and Moose? Moose, the TNA World Heavyweight Champion. EC3, the former TNA World Heavyweight Champion, of course, as well. It's a very interesting situation, this with EC3 and Moose. In fact, I did predict this. I did speak about this a couple of weeks ago, that I thought that this was the direction that they were going to go in with EC3 and Moose. I thought, though, that EC3 was going to win the Impact World Championship at Slammiversary. That isn't the case, but it does look like we're going to get an EC3 versus Moose feud in the near future in Impact Wrestling. So this past week on Impact Wrestling, the show opened up with one of EC3's Control Your Narrative promos that we've seen on his social media recently. He talked about living in the moment. He says that we have been warned. Essentially the same things we've seen on his social media. He's been very, very good with his social media posting recently and his social media content. Very good for hyping up his return to the company, his next landing, where he was going to go next after being released by WWE back in April. And obviously at the end of Slammiversary at the weekend, we saw EC3 make his return to the company, not in person, but we saw him cut into the feed of Slammiversary. We saw the EC3 logo, the 3 lines, and we saw EC3 not say anything, but throw a glass of liquor at the wall, and that was EC3's official return to the company. We knew that he was going to appear on Impact Wrestling this coming week. He had been hyped up on social media by the Impact Wrestling social media accounts, and so we were waiting with anticipation about what EC3 would do next in Impact Wrestling, and he opened up the show with the promo. Later on in the show, though, Moose defended his TNA World Heavyweight Championship, and who would attack Moose after defeating Fallah Bahh? It would be EC3 who attacked the self-appointed, self-coronated, whatever you want to call it, TNA World Heavyweight Champion. The surprise actually here was actually really well done. I thought it was well done. It was very smooth. The thing I did find quite funny is that EC3 has taken to having a towel over his head. It's very Taz-like. I don't see the purpose of the towel. I guess he was trying to hide his identity or whatever. The issue being that there is no one in the crowd to hide your identity from. So I'm not sure who would necessarily, I don't know, try and be hiding from, but that's what that is. Impact has teased Moose versus EC3 during an interview earlier on in the show, but Moose brushed off the idea. He said that, EC3, he's not even paying attention to me. He's too busy, and he mockingly said this, controlling his narrative. He's too busy posting out his tweets and doing his social media posts to even concern himself with the TNA World Heavyweight Champion, and a lot of people bought it. A lot of people, myself included, thought, okay, maybe that Moose and EC3 thing isn't happening. Maybe EC3 is going to be doing something with the Good Brothers. Of course, EC3 did make his debut at the end of Slammiversary as the Good Brothers were in the ring, and I mentioned about a potential stable with EC3 called The Narrative, so I wasn't expecting to have EC3 attack Moose at the end of his TNA World Heavyweight Championship match. But it took everyone by surprise, and he absolutely made a surprise there. He didn't say anything after he attacked Moose. He hit a move, got out of there very quickly, and seemingly is focused on taking down some of the false idols that Moose has speculated about on social media. We'll touch on that in a second. What I didn't like, and I will say this, what I didn't like is how they had lead commentator Josh Matthews, of course, does a play-by-play for Impact Wrestling. He was saying on commentary, what's going on, EC3? He doesn't even work here. He's not even signed to Impact Wrestling. He doesn't work here. Of course, that is just, it's all storyline. That's massively BS. Maybe it's got a tiniest bit of truth in that EC3 might not have signed a contract officially yet and is still working a deal out. FTR are doing the same thing with Impact Wrestling, with AEW rather. But to say that EC3, he doesn't work here and he's not even signed. Yeah, it's not true. Also, factor in that after Slammiversary this past weekend, Impact Wrestling released a press release hyping the success of the show and all the people that made their returns or debuts at the show to Impact Wrestling, whether it was Heath Slater, Eric Young, the Motor City Machine Guns, and what, of course, one of those names was EC3. So they were talking about EC3 returning to the company. Also going into the show, when you're heavily promoting EC3 is going to be here, we're going to hear from EC3. What's EC3 going to do? The idea that he isn't then signed, or what he appeared here? I didn't think he was going to appear here. You were highlighting him and announcing him and hyping him up for the show. How could he not be going to appear here? He doesn't work here. So that idea just came across as a bit stupid and a bit silly. But we'll have to wait and see what they do for the storyline of that. They might play that up as if to say, "Oh, I'm not signed anywhere. I'm just showing up in Impact Wrestling to right wrongs and down false idols." It would appear that a former TNA World Heavyweight Champion himself, EC3, does have his sights set on the current title holder, Moose. And Moose defeated, as I mentioned, Fallah Bahh on Impact Wrestling this past week. And then, of course, EC3 did his attack and left. I will mention about the Impact, the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, rather. It's been... Well, there's a couple of bit of news here when it comes to the TNA World Heavyweight Championship. One, it's not the TNA World Heavyweight Championship that we all know. We just suspected, and I did myself, suspected that when they brought this back, it was a bit like, okay, they've had it in a warehouse somewhere, they've brought it back, they've always had it. That isn't the case by all accounts. This is actually a counterfeit version or a knockoff version of the championship that was made in Pakistan that they bought on eBay. This was revealed by Bout Fan Dan on Twitter, who is very, very knowledgeable when it comes to championship titles. He always knows when WWE is going to release a new one or has got a new one. He even released a picture of the WWE United States Championship back in December. Even though it was actually just revealed in June or July of this year. He had and showed images of this back in December and had a copy of it back in December. He is that much in the know when it comes to championships, and he says that this version of the TNA World Heavyweight Championship is not the original version. It's not the original version that was carried around back in the day in Impact Wrestling. I don't know where that one is, and I don't know if Impact Wrestling even knows where that one is, but it certainly isn't with Impact Wrestling right now, so they had to get a knockoff version from Pakistan on eBay, which is a throwback to old school TNA in just hilarity of how badly that sounds. But what they have done, which is a really nice touch, is they've updated it. Of course, it's still the old TNA World Heavyweight Championship in terms of the plates, but they've changed the leather. So the leather on it now is a white leather, a bit reminiscent of the white leather on the old Intercontinental Championship. Really, really like that update. I think it looks so much slicker. It almost looks like a different championship. If anything, I think it looks better than the old Impact World Championship, than the old TNA World Heavyweight Championship. And I think it's really smart from Impact Wrestling to change the leather on the belt, because if you think about it, they're hyping this up and they're talking about this as it's not a real championship, right? He's just a self-appointed TNA World Heavyweight Champion. It's not about that's actually currently in existence or is even actively defended by Impact Wrestling or has any meaning in Impact Wrestling. So how do you differentiate that to a casual fan from the bouts that they currently have or the championships that they currently have in Impact Wrestling? You change the leather. It's as simple as that, because now it's become a custom title. It's not like the Impact World Championship. It's not like the Activision Championship or whatever, because it looks completely different. The leather is completely different. And it comes across more like a custom championship or a self-appointed championship like the $1 Million Championship or the FTW Championship or something along that line. So I really like that. I think it aesthetically, of course, looks a lot better. But I think in terms of logic as well, I think that actually makes a lot more sense there as well. So I've enjoyed the update to the TNA World Heavyweight Championship there. Another note when it comes to bouts in Impact Wrestling right now, that the Impact World Championship that Eddie Edwards currently holds, and this is a tangent, we'll get back onto Moose and EC3 in a second, but the Impact World Championship that is currently held by Eddie Edwards isn't the previous Impact World Championship either. Of course, Tessa Blanchard was the former Impact World Champion. She was released by Impact Wrestling earlier this month and stripped of the Impact World Championship in the process. Her contract was expiring with the company, and she hadn't appeared on Impact Wrestling television for a long time due to the pandemic. and due to living in Mexico with her fiance. And it was difficult, of course, to travel over to the tapings, so she couldn't appear, which was fair enough. But once she could start to appear, and she was announced for Slammiversary, she still decided not to appear. Impact Wrestling asked her to cut promos and make promos that they could splice into the show. They didn't hear anything back from her. She was asked to come in and make one shot to drop the Impact World Championship before her contract expired. She asked for an astronomical figure. This was a bit of akin to the Jeff Jarrett Intercontinental Championship scenario back in WWE in the 90s, whereby Jeff Jarrett's is slightly similar, but not exactly. In this case, Jeff Jarrett's contract had lapsed, and WWE needed him to come in and drop the championship because Jeff Jarrett wasn't going to re-sign with the company. He was going to go to WCW. But Jeff Jarrett, because his contract had lapsed and WWE took their eye off the ball, they didn't have their Intercontinental Championship and they needed him to drop it. But they needed him there to do that. So Jeff Jarrett held WWE and Vince McMahon up for what has been told to be quite a lot of money. And in that case, he got his money, dropped the title, and was never seen in WWE for a very, very, very long time. And Vince McMahon was so bitter and angry about it that when WWE actually purchased WCW back in 2001, Vince McMahon went out of his way to mention on Monday Night Raw, in the opening of Monday Night Raw, that Jeff Jarrett was not going to be signed by WWE and was fired once again for WWE before even going back to the company. So it's a bit of a similar situation there with Tessa Blanchard and the Impact World Championship. She asked for an astronomical figure to drop the championship on an episode of Impact Wrestling, and Impact went, you know what, screw it, we won't bring her back, we'll strip her of the title, we'll fire her, and that was the case. The problem being is that Tessa Blanchard still has that Impact World Championship, so they had to make a new one. And get a replica of that Impact World Championship for Eddie Edwards to win, and the one that he carries around right now is a new version. It isn't the version previously held by Tessa Blanchard. So that's an interesting side story there. Now, going back to EC3, of course, EC3 was released by WWE months ago, along with a number of different wrestlers, Black Wednesday, whatever you want to call it, back in April after WrestleMania. Some of those wrestlers we have seen now that all of their non-compete clauses have expired. That was part of the deal. Whenever you're released by WWE, you have a non-compete clause for 90 days. It's different if your contract just expires. You can appear on someone programming the next day. But in the case of EC3 and the likes of Eric Young, Heath, etc., they couldn't appear anywhere for 90 days, the Good Brothers included. But now EC3, along with several other names, have now since appeared on Impact Wrestling programming. I think it's interesting that EC3 posted a tweet after attacking Moose, talking about false idols and that kind of situation. And it's interesting because he's calling himself he's calling Moose a false idol because Moose is claiming to be a leader and a champion in which he's not, right? Moose is the self-appointed TNA World Heavyweight Champion. It's been speculated that maybe the storyline might be that EC3 wants that title back, and he seems to be after Moose now without even showing up in Impact Wrestling first, sort of thing. And EC3's, he put a message out on July 1st, which was quite interesting. And this was obviously before Slammiversary. But he posted a tweet, and I believe this was the Twitter post about when he did the whole AEW promo, when he posted a tweet online and posted a video online that had a lot of AEW puns in it, talk about the Con, the Inner Circle, Alpha versus Omega, that kind of thing. And then Moose responded to this because obviously the narrative, controlling your narrative, hit home with Moose. The TNA World Heavyweight Champion made sure that EC3 didn't get too ahead of himself because he, quote, owns EC3. He said, quote, hey, at the real EC3, you can't control your narrative, ... I own you. And this led many people to think, myself included, that we were going to get this EC3 versus Moose feud in the future, which looks like we're getting now. That was also previously teased when on an episode of Impact Wrestling, Moose defended the TNA World Heavyweight Championship successfully against Hernandez, and then as he won the match, instead of Moose's theme music playing, we heard the famous Trouble, the former TNA theme of EC3, play instead. There were no fans. The Moose was confused, Josh Matthews was confused, everyone was confused, and then the music quickly stopped before Moose's music started to play. So that was, again, the snippet that we were going to, or the tease that we were going to get a Moose versus EC3 feud, which is looking like what we're getting now. And this was subsequently pretty much confirmed when Moose cut the promo about EC3 on social media, and now absolutely confirmed with EC3 attacking Moose on Impact Wrestling. So where do I think this one will go? It's a very interesting one, because I think if they're going to portray EC3 as not working for Impact Wrestling, he's not signed here. Again, I'm not a massive fan of that. I would prefer them just to be open about it, but this is the character that they're going with. But it makes sense, I suppose, of someone that's not currently signed with Impact Wrestling to go after a championship that isn't actually an Impact Wrestling championship. It's just a custom championship, and that is the TNA World Heavyweight Championship that's currently held by Moose. That does make a bit of sense in terms of logic and storytelling from that point of view. I do think that if this is the storyline, I would like to see the TNA World Heavyweight Championship around a bit longer. Although my feeling is now that if EC3 is feuding with Moose, then eventually he's going to defeat Moose for the TNA World Heavyweight Championship, and EC3 is all about cutting these promos and making these posts and tweets and everything on social media at the moment that he doesn't have any time for nostalgia. He's not come back home. He wants to erase the past and all this sort of stuff. And I guess the TNA World Heavyweight Championship is a nostalgia storyline. It is the past. It's embracing the old TNA history. And EC3 doesn't want a part of that, I guess, considering that EC3 is calling himself a different person at the moment. This isn't the EC3 of yesteryear in Impact Wrestling. This is a different EC3. This is a different version. He doesn't want to even think or talk about that previous version. I guess seeing the TNA World Heavyweight Championship and the lineage that has, it's a championship that EC3 once held, and maybe it reminds him of his old self. Therefore, EC3 has to get rid of it to fully become a new person, and the person stopping him and preventing him from doing that at the moment is Moose. But that storyline would suggest that eventually EC3 is going to win this championship once again, and then I guess get rid of it from Impact Wrestling forever. I wish they wouldn't do that, but I think that is where it's going. And I think that would be probably, I guess, around Bound for Glory time. I could see them stretching this out for a few months. But I do think eventually EC3, right, he's got to be in the Impact World Championship picture. He's probably, at this point, in terms of single stars, the biggest single star in Impact Wrestling right now. I mean, he has to be considered on that level. He has to be considered in that main event level. And for me, it's a matter of time before EC3 ends up in the main event picture once again. Eddie Edwards has done an open challenge kind of situation at the moment for the Impact World Championship, and saying that anyone and all comers can face him for the Impact World Championship every single week. Do I think EC3 is going to answer that? No. But I do think eventually we're going to get an EC3 versus Eddie Edwards match for the Impact World Championship, and I do think eventually EC3 is going to win. I think EC3 is a wrestler at the moment that Impact Wrestling looks at, that they want to build the company around going forward. This has all been talk about a new chapter and a new dawn and a new beginning for Impact Wrestling, and they've got so much momentum coming out of Slammiversary, and so many people talking about them in positive lights, and so many people watch Slammiversary at the weekend. Slammiversary is the best buy rate for a pay-per-view they've done in a long time. We don't have official numbers. Fight TV don't release those numbers. It'll be a long time before we find out the pay-per-view numbers, but from what we've heard and from what we've read online, Slammiversary was the best event that Impact Wrestling have done in a long time, and even the social media's numbers, right, do back that up themselves. Impact Wrestling was trending worldwide, and that hasn't happened in forever. Impact Wrestling was trending #1 in the States, or Slammiversary was. That hasn't happened. They've had their best month on YouTube. They've had their best month on social media. I think they've gained 100,000 subscribers on YouTube as well. They're doing very, very well. And I think this next chapter in Impact Wrestling's history will be building the company around EC3. And that, to me, also means that I think EC3 is going to be with the company for the long haul. There have been rumors that he could do a bit of a Cody Rhodes situation, and he might end up in AEW as well as Impact Wrestling and New Japan, and maybe go to the NWA or Ring of Honor. I think if there's any other company that he will go to, it'll be New Japan, and I think the company would facilitate and allow EC3 to do that, because that's what they're doing at the moment with the likes of Gallows and Anson. Gallows and Anson, the Good Brothers, of course, have signed 2-year deals with Impact Wrestling, but in their contracts it is there that they can work New Japan dates once they're able to travel back to Japan again, and once it's safe to do so, they can work their dates around their Impact Wrestling schedule, or Impact Wrestling will work around their New Japan schedule, and vice versa. versa. So I would assume if EC3 is going to go anywhere else, at the moment it would be New Japan, but I don't expect him to be appearing for AEW or anything like that. I think this idea that EC3 he's not signed with the company is not the case. It's not the case. Maybe he hasn't signed a contract, but I would be shocked, quite frankly, if Impact Wrestling were willing to let him appear on AEW television. It certainly benefits them, but I'm not sure if AEW would be willing to have an Impact Wrestling wrestler regularly be involved in storylines on their television. It just doesn't make sense financially. Of course, we could have a scenario similar to an Eddie Kingston that we saw last night on AEW Dynamite, whereby Impact Wrestling's EC3 answers Cody's TNT Championship Open Challenge for a one-off. The issue there is that most likely, because he's not with the company, EC3 would lose that match. Do Impact Wrestling necessarily want their top star going into AEW and losing a match, and it reflects bad on the company? So again, it's a very messy situation there, and I just don't think that's the case. I think people are reading in too much to the whole he's not with the company, he's not signed with the company. I just don't think that's the case. But as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on a potential Moose versus EC3 feud? What directions do you think we'll go in? Do you think we'll see EC3 versus Moose on Impact Wrestling, or do you think they'll save it until Bound for Glory for the future? What do you think the future is for the TNA World Heavyweight Championship? Will it be in Impact Wrestling for long, or will it be gone pretty soon? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll be sure to respond to all of your comments down there. I really enjoy interacting with all of you guys. If you have enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a like. The more likes we receive, it really does help us out on the channel in terms of getting into people's recommendation feeds and getting us up the rankings on YouTube. So if you have enjoyed it, please do like. If you also enjoyed it, please do share with a friend or tell a friend about Wrestle News 365. But most importantly, please do subscribe to Wrestle News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right hand corner of the screen right now, or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video along with another video for you to watch. We're on our road to 600 subscribers now. We're over 500 subscribers on that long road to 1,000 subscribers. So once we get to that, we're going to be doing a lot more Impact Wrestling live streams, watch-alongs. We did a live stream and a watch-along for Slammiversary at the weekend. If we get to 1,000 subscribers, we'll be doing weekly live streams and watch-alongs of Impact Wrestling on Access TV. So the quicker we get there, the quicker we can do some really fun and engaging content on this channel. And if you have subscribed already, I really do appreciate it. I appreciate everyone that's interacts with this channel, watches these videos, all of this stuff. It's humbling, and I really, really do appreciate it. But if you haven't subscribed, please do. You can also follow us on all of our social media platforms. Our handles are on the screen right now. It's at 365Wrestle on Twitter and at WrestleNews365 on Facebook and Instagram. The links are in the description box below for all of those social media platforms. So be sure to give us a like or a follow there. Thank you very much for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.